to the Committee of Council meeting for Friday the 8th of May. I'm the Deputy Mayor, Tangiu Takeri. In the absence of the Mayor, I'll be chairing the meeting today. So the 8th of May meeting is now open. The purpose of the meeting is to hear oral submissions in support of submissions to the annual budget. Before we do that, there are just a few housekeeping matters that we need to take care of. You would have seen from the start that the meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be posted or available on the council's website. Can I ask all meeting attendees to ensure that your microphone is on mute and that you unmute for the purposes of talking or about to ask a question? In attendance, we have elected members. We also have members of the council's governance team, general managers and finance officers. But can we just do a roll call of colleagues? So, Councillor Rutherford.
Yes, Morena, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Meehan.
Yes, present.
Councillor Barrett.
Kia ora, Brent Barrett here.
Councillor Petrinas.
Yes, present.
Councillor Naylor.
Good morning.
Councillor Harpiter.
Yes, I'm here, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes, Sata Maria, everyone.
Councillor Hancock.
Kia ora.
Councillor Bowen.
Morena, Rachel here.
Councillor Dingwall.
Morena, I'm here.
Councillor Beattie.
Good morning, present.
Councillor Dennison.
Kia ora, good morning.
Councillor Butt.
Yes, good morning, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll move to item number 1, and that is apologies. I have apologies from the Mayor on council business. Are there any other apologies? Councillors, just as a reminder, if we can just indicate by using the chat function, that will just signal to me that you either want to make a comment, a question, or want to prompt something. There don't seem to be any others, so I will look to move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dennison, you're on my screen. Are you okay to second that? Great. That's seconded by Councillor Dennison. Any discussion on that? There being none, I'll do this on the voices, so if you can just unmute at this stage. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? If not, that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to item number 2, which is the notification of any additional items. I'm not aware of any. Are there any from elected members? There being none, we'll move on to the 3rd item, which is any declarations of interest. I have been advised by Councillor Finlay that there is a declaration for him in relation to submitter number 34 today. So are there any further declarations? There are none, so Councillor Finlay, that is noted. We'll move to the confirmation of the minutes, which is item number 4. That's from the Committee of Council meeting on the 4th of March last. Just note, please, that there is a notation there in red, which indicates the subsequent amendment by the council at its meeting. So I am happy to move that the minutes of the Committee Council meeting of 4 March 2020, Part 1 Public, be confirmed as a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Butt, I see you on my screen, so you're happy to second that. Are there any comments? If not, I'll now put that motion on the voices. Those in favour say aye.
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 Against?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone against? Any abstentions? If not, that is carried unanimously. We'll move to item number 5, which is the hearing of submitters for the annual budget 2020/21. Just for the benefit of those submitters who are online already, there is a 10-minute opportunity that you have to present, and I'm advised that you should see in the chat bar there, I can see it now, the timer. So it'll time up rather than timing down. So if necessary, I will give a reminder when you've hit 8 minutes, and then obviously I will give an absolute reminder when you've hit 10 minutes. The 10 minutes does cover any question time, so it's 10 minutes in totality. So if you are expecting some questions, then my suggestion will be to leave some time for elected members to ask you some questions. You can take all of your written material as being read, so we ask that you speak to the key or the salient points. And what will happen from here is all of the written material and any other supplementary material will effectively be forwarded to the Committee of Council meeting on the 20th of May for consideration in the first instance. So what we'll do is we'll move to our first submitter, and that is Dale. Now, Dale, are you with us?
I am with you. I'm sorry you can't see me. My camera doesn't work.
Okay, look, we can hear you, so that's the main thing. This is submission number 1, and Dale, you're familiar with this process already, so I'll hand over to you, please.
Wonderful, thank you. Good morning. First, my apologies. The pound spend is incorrect in my submission. It is up to 2.9 million and the plus GST was deleted. This was very difficult to find in the first place. The consultation document gives the clear impression that all proposed changes have been listed on pages 8 and 9. This is not the case. It is, however, an example of what submitter 37 is probably referring to when he compares the things not consulted on with what he describes as an absolute distraction. Our Voluntary Community Centre Association Committee are being encouraged to build a hall which is just 114 metres square. The committee was turned down for lotteries and ECCT grants, apparently because of proximity to 2 large towns. Letters of refusal have not been shared. The latest Palmerston City Council report and plans haven't been consulted on with associated members or the community. Instead, Palmerston City Council are calling for expressions of interest from potential tenderers. This is premature and is not going into consultation with an open mind. I understand that Fire and Emergency have approached the project team to discuss a joint initiative, but this has not been passed on to the Bunnythorpe Association or community. To recap, in 2008, a feasibility study commissioned by Manawatu District Council put our population at 756 using 2006 census mesh block data. This concluded a hall with an open area of 350 to 400 metres squared was needed. The boundary change process started soon after, and everything went on hold until long after we found ourselves in Palmerston City Council. Another feasibility study was commissioned in 2017. This concluded a hall size of just 160 metres squared. This was rejected as too small by members in the community, and because, among other things, our village is home to many rural residents not caught up in settlement statistics, but to whom our amenities and small businesses are their closest and preferred, which is the case for every rural settlement, hence their larger hall sizes. Palmerston North City Council officials apparently have a report which compares Bunnythorpe's population with suburbs in Palmerston North to substantiate the 114 metre square hall. I have asked for a copy of this. We are a rural settlement. We can't just get on regular public transport, cycle, walk, scoot or skate on concrete or bitumen surfaces across safe pedestrian crossings to events in the city. Likewise, people living in the city suburbs have many choices of venues for private functions, sports and community events able to be arrived at by the same modes of travel. This is an example of the inaccurate and oppressive picture the Council paints that Palmerston North City Council is one community. It simply isn't. Another glaring example is Palmerston North City Council's summary of submissions, which assumes that submitter 3's statement, "It is not the time to carry on with unnecessary projects such as the planned cycleways in the city," as referring to not only the City Cycleways project, but also the Bunnythorpe to Palmerston North Cycleway. The Bunnythorpe to Palmerston North Cycleway is not in the city. This comment requires deletion from Project 1095 in the summary. Bunnythorpe should be being compared with like rural communities like Longburn, population 354, hall size 550 metres squared. Houcombe, population 468, hall size 351 metres squared. Senson, population 588, hall size 692 metres squared. And let's not forget the Te Kawo Centre in Rongotia, population 642. Bunnythorpe's population is likely closer to 1,000, yet has no hall, not even a school hall. We have no large covered venue. The fact that funding organisations have said that our proximity to both Fielding and Palmerston North is an advantage and a reason we were turned down is supported by Council, yet countering this assumption should be supported because our geographical location has been a huge disadvantage. For example, our geographical location meant that after the local government reforms of 1989, none of the usual maintenance of our community hall occurred. This had previously been undertaken by a steadfast hall society, which along with the Bunnythorpe Domain Board, who funded projects and facility maintenance, were disbanded by the new Manawatu District Council. Our hall, as well as other facilities, such as the rec grounds changing rooms, which are now being replaced with this puny hall tacked on, got left to wreck and ruin, and the funds from the lease of the 44-acre Bunnythorpe Domain land now go directly to Palmerston North City Council. Because of our geographical location, in a 2008 review of rural delivery areas, our postal addresses landed within 5 different area codes instead of 1, because Bunnythorpe didn't show up as a settlement in New Zealand place statistics. Now, the only way we can get information out to our residents is to physically put a notice in each mailbox that a meeting is going to be held, yet we don't have anywhere to meet because of our geographical location. Kiwi Rail had to stagger a public meeting recently because the only place available is 2 adjoining classrooms at the school, and there will be many future public meetings with Kiwi Rail, NZTA and no doubt Civil Defence. Because of our geographical location, we don't have anywhere to provide evacuation shelter or coordinate relief in an emergency. Because of our geographical location, we were identified in 2010 as forming the part of the rural freight ring road which converges north, south, east and west traffic going to and from the northeast industrial zone, and ever since, nothing has been done to mitigate the effects of the continued increases in traffic. Council's position is we will not be spending any money on roading, cycleways or walkways until NZTA have finalised their plans. So all of the funding for our road-related infrastructure seems to be diverted elsewhere whenever it falls due. The diverting to city cycleways of the funding for the Bunnythorpe to Palmerston North shared pathway last year is one example. Funding set aside over the years for the replacement of 4 decaying bridges is another. The dangerous pseudo roundabout and its lack of prominent signage is yet another. And another is that there is no safe way for children to get from one side of 2 very busy roads and the railway to the other because Council will not spend any money until NZTA have finalised their plans. So our community school has suffered ever since road planning proposals began back in 2007, yet Tokomaru School has an underpass under one busy road and Whakarongo School has a separate walking and cycling track. Now, because of our geographical location, we are being told there is not enough money for a purpose-built community facility, yet Palmerston North City Council plan to build a purpose-built dog pound for up to $2.9 million, which has not been budgeted for. The comparisons, dog pound, the current facility no longer complies with animal welfare requirements. The Bunnythorpe Hall no longer complied with human health and safety standards and was demolished. The dog pound, the proposal is for a substantially larger facility to cater for the same amount of dogs, with many separate purposed areas, including a 60-metre square education room and a rehoming facility. The Bunnythorpe Hall, the proposal is for a substantially smaller facility from 297 metres square to 114 metres square, even though our population has doubled since the original hall was demolished and is about to grow exponentially, with Bunnythorpe and Longburn being the next cabs off the rank in terms of residential development. An extension of 54 metres square can apparently be added at some later date, but this is still too small. Dog pound, a contingency to enable the entire project to be brought forward a year and therefore the entire $2.9 million project to be completed in 2020-2021. The Bunnythorpe Hall, the project is behind and reduced because of an unwillingness to provide the necessary budget for a suitable and usable facility. It would be a travesty to waste over $300,000 of hard-fought and hard-earned community funds towards a building which is not fit for purpose. The current plan goes against the Palmerston North City Council's own Community Services and Facilities Plan, in which it states, incorporate demographic projections and information about communities' needs into all development and review of community facilities. The Safe Community Plan says, building resilience and disaster preparedness for civil defence and emergency situations. And Palmerston North City Council has been accredited a safe community because of a commitment to this plan. And the principles of good urban design are seriously lacking in the positioning of this hall. Now, let's see the transparency and partnership that was promised pre-elections and open up dialogue between Palmerston North City Council, the community, fire and emergency and civil defence. We need to get a factual picture of our population and extrapolate out the future in terms of a fit-for-purpose facility for this community, which in the very near future will be inundated by industry and residential housing, and whose amenities and small businesses will still be favoured by its wider rural population.
Dale, just indicating 2 minutes remaining.
I finished, thank you.
Oh, that's good timing. Right, we'll move to questions. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Dale, can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
Thanks for your submission. I just wanted to ask why you decided on the dog pound as a comparison with the hall, compared to, say, any number of other projects in the annual plan. What was it that made you decide that the dog pound was the best comparison with the Bunnythorpe Hall?
Because it's not in the budget already, so it's a new allocation.
Okay, and so are you, so putting aside that comparison, is the main thrust of your submission that you want the council to increase the budget for the Bunnythorpe Community Hall?
Yes, it's more to do with whatever a purpose-built facility looks like, not so much how much it's going to cost, but something that will be usable.
Okay, and so you don't accept the arguments that we were given from funders about the size of the hall, the number of people, and the distance from Palmerston North. You're rejecting those comments, I take it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. That concludes your submission time to us this morning. As I've indicated, all of the supplementary information will be forwarded to the Committee Council meeting on the 20th of May for further consideration. I know we can't see you, but if you do have any written material, i.e. you've got a copy of the oral submission that you've just given, if you'd like to make that available to our governance staff, we can make sure that elected members receive a copy of that. But thank you again for taking time to submit on the annual budget.
Sure, thank you.
We'll move to our next submitter, which is number 28. Do we have Annette Nixon and Reverend Susan Blakey?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Tangi, I'm here.
And you
Great.
Well, thank you.
Excellent. Well, welcome. I'm not too sure if you were here at the start of the meeting, but just a reminder that the meeting of the Committee Council is being recorded and will be available on the Council's website thereafter. And we have a 10-minute opportunity for submissions, so you can take your written submissions as being read. And if you want us to ask you some questions, then just make sure that you leave some time for that. We do have a timer malfunction at the moment. So yes. What I'm going to do is if we get to 8 minutes, I will just somehow conveniently indicate that you've got 2 minutes remaining. Okay. But I'm sure you're familiar with the process. So,
Tangi, before I begin, the Reverend Susan Blakey is to be on this as well. So is Susan and Susan showing?
Yes.
Is Susan showing on your screen?
No. Susan, are you joining us via camera or by phone?
Both, I am. They should be both showing.
Oh, there you go. Yes, excellent. Good. So right. Your 10 minutes is over to the both of you. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Tangi, and thank you, councillors, for hearing our submission. This is a submission from Presbyterian New Church. The last time we made a submission was, it was Peter Thompson and I at the time of the 10-year plan. And at that point, we talked about the redevelopment of the parish and the fact that there was likely to be surplus land available for community purposes on the Awapuni site. Now, we at that time said that we would be back to speak to the next 10-year plan. However, in the meantime, a number of things have happened, and one of those has been the joining of the St David's, Roslyn parish, and along with the St Andrews and St Mark's parish. So that commenced from the 1st of July last year. And as the Minister, we welcomed Reverend Susan Blakey. So I've just got a few comments to make, and then Susan will introduce herself and talk about some of the points that are in our submission, and then we'll perhaps round off with some comments about what we might be looking for in the future. And when I say looking for, it's in terms of working in partnership. So what's happened since our last submission? The parish work has been an energising and very active activity. But as well as that, Palmerston North City Council officers, City Planner David Murphy has been and had a meeting with Peter Thompson and I on site at St Mark's, Awapuni, now called Presbyterian New Church, Awapuni. And then I had a meeting with Debbie Duncan, and that has been followed up in the last year with a meeting with Joanne Ransom, the Community Development Manager. So we have talked about the opportunities that exist with this large piece of land in the Awapuni village. So at this stage, I'll ask Susan to introduce herself, and she will talk about the what's happening in the parish, and also about the comments that we made in our submission about our response to COVID-19. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Morena. I'm new to Palmerston North. I moved here probably about 8 months ago now from Wellington. And I live in Awapuni, so I just live just behind the St Mark's Church here, so just behind the land that Annette's been alluding to. So it's been an amazing community, but probably the main things that I want to talk to is our response to the COVID-19, since you've read the paper. Probably the two main things that we're finding that are coming up as great needs in the community would be safe delivery of food, and that will continue even under level 2 for people that are vulnerable, so over 70 or immune compromised. Often what we're finding with the people that we're working with is that they can actually access food in terms of financially, but actually getting delivery of it, and the fact that delivery costs more is what they can sometimes struggle with. So we've been offering a free delivery in terms of that they just simply put in the order, and I think that once they know that there's a free delivery and there is not a cost over and above that, then it makes it a little bit more accessible to them, which has been great. The other side of it is, which is probably the most significant one, is the availability of information technology, the things that perhaps the younger generation takes so much for granted. But for people where they have access only to a landline, it's amazing what we've found is that while we have been encouraging people to take up technology and even offering devices sometimes for free, we find that unless we call it, and we're calling it the grandchilding process, which is that unless you kind of come in as a very trusted person who says, look, we'll work with you, we'll remote access with you, we'll go slowly with you and offer support for you, we're finding that people often won't take up this kind of technology, whether it be wireless or whether it be by Wi-Fi, whatever it might be, unless they're well supported through that process. So certainly having some support around access to devices would be great for us. So at the moment, we're relying on people either donating devices that they no longer need. We're finding that with people that are financially constrained, having devices such as something like a tablet which can access their cellular network is very advantageous, so that they're not having the cost of a Wi-Fi in their particular, whether it be a unit or a temporary accommodation. And that's probably the most salient points that we're working with, other than, of course, the usual working across 3 sites working with community, which we're doing a lot on Facebook. So Facebook social media has been a massive place for us at the moment. And us and probably about 300 million people around the planet been using Zoom. So other than that, it's been a challenging but also rewarding time. And I've been surprised also by the amount of people that have been able to take up technology so that they connect virtually. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. So the activities that always happened at St David's, like the preschool gathering in the lighthouse, the meeting point program that had been running for many, many years, the seniors meetings, a number of those things, they still continue. And at St Mark's, the op shop still continues, and the earthquake strengthened hall as it continues as a meeting place for a range of things. So there's a lot happening in the parish, and there's an opportunity for more to happen as well. So at this stage, we look and listen to the comments that are in the media about the city recovery plan, and wonder to what extent that Presbyterian New Church can be part of contributing to that as well. And over the next year, we would expect you'll be doing the 10-year plan next year, I gather, and we'll probably be in a better position to come and speak to you again about exactly where we've got to in this unusual and strange situation, and of which we don't know all the consequences for our parish, for our people and our city. So at this point, I'll stop talking and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Susan. We do have a couple. The first one from Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Morena, and thank you, Susan and Annette, for making your submission and coming and speaking to us today. Really appreciate that. At the end of your written submission, you talk about rates, and you've suggested that the 4.4% increase is too much at this time. I'd be really interested to know what your view would be about what would be an acceptable level of rates increase at this time. And secondly to that, would be interested to know if you think that if that meant a lower level of service in some area, whether that would be acceptable in order to achieve a lower rates increase.
I think it's a matter of re-examining priorities.
Yeah. So do you have a view about what would be acceptable in your view? You said that you feel that 4.4% is too much. If we needed to re-evaluate, reprioritise, what sort of level do you think would be an acceptable level?
Well, less than that, and also with a focus on the well-being of people.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Just have time for one more question from Councillor Bowen.
Kia ora, Annette, and welcome, Susan. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this, and welcome to Palmerston North. It was really just a question about ongoing activities for either of you, really, at St David. St David is probably the building I'm most familiar with, and have been in the hall recently at an older person's group. But I just wondered if you could update us on what's the plan with the church building itself, the congregational building at the front, rather than just the community hall.
Susan, over to you.
So at this stage, we haven't got any fixed plans for that. Obviously, COVID-19, as I'm sure it has the impact on you as well, means that we have to actually get together strategically as a team and reprioritise what's going to be important for our community. Mm-hmm. The church, much like the council, exists for not itself, but for the community around it. And so providing facilities, so looking at things like if you've got a significant amount of people that will suffer from job losses or reduction in income, or reduction of what it means to be community in a traditional way that it usually did by gathering, then those will be the things that we would want to focus more on. And so, for an example, creating it, so using that hall for and exploring, as the case of the land in Awapuni, making it so that it works better for a community that will still be struggling with the tail of COVID-19 will be our priorities.
And certainly that community hall seems to get a lot of use, and it's actually a lovely space. So thank you for continuing to make that available, even though the church building itself is not what it should be. But that's it from me. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And thank you. That concludes submission time allocated this morning. So Susan and Annette, thank you for making the time to come and speak to us. As I've said previously, the information will be forwarded to Committee Council on the 20th of May. But you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, or you're welcome to leave. That's entirely up to you. But thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Move on to our next submitter, which is the Extinction Rebellion Manawatu. Beth, you are with us, and this is submission number 29. So I think you were with us from the start of the meeting, so you've heard me explain the 10-minute opportunity. But when you're ready, over to you.
Okay, can you hear me now? I've just unmuted myself.
Yes, we can hear you and see you, so welcome.
Thank you. Oh, kia ora, and thank you for an opportunity to talk with you on behalf of Extinction Rebellion Manawatu. We want to say that we really like the Council's strategic goal of reducing the environmental footprint, developing clean energy, and decreasing carbon dioxide emissions. We're pleased with some of the steps the Council's taken more recent times, like you've signed the climate change MOU with Horizons, you've established a climate change portfolio, and you've got an environmentally sustainable Committee of Council in place. So why did Extinction Rebellion say in our written submission that we think you need to update your 10-year plan earlier? Sounds pretty drastic. It's because of the lack of urgency. As we see it, climate change is a huge threat to everything. You know, you've got a climate change goal of reducing carbon dioxide emissions by 25% by 2028. We think we've got to bump that up fast. The IPCC in 2018 report gave us 10 to 12 years to reverse the possibility of irreversible climate change. And since then, in spite of efforts that many people have been making in their small ways, carbon dioxide emissions have continued to go up. One of our concerns in the plan is the balance between growth and protecting the environment. The plan in some places talks about growth and sustainable growth as if it's a good thing. Well, sustainable growth, we don't know quite what you mean by that, because it seems to be a contradiction in terms. You can't have infinite growth in a finite planet. And really it comes down to a choice. Are we going to prioritise the environment that we depend on for our very lives, or are we going to prioritise economic growth? The COVID pandemic has brought about very rapid changes in human behaviour and in how our societies are functioning. And that actually gives us hope that maybe we can still change in time to prevent catastrophe. The climate catastrophe is sort of creeping up slowly on us. It's much more insidious than COVID that suddenly hit us almost out of the blue, but it's also less reversible. Things like injections and treatments won't be an option for climate change by the time it's really making itself felt. And so that's why we see it as an emergency, something we've got to do something about while we still can. Many of you probably have children and grandchildren that you love dearly. And like me, you may not be here when climate change really starts to hurt, but those kids will be. And it could be extremely painful and difficult for them. So I'm hoping that my generation and the next generation down can work hard together to pull us back from the brink of that disaster. So that's why it's urgent. In terms of actions, we gave some suggestions in the written submission. I've got a whole lot more suggestions now, but it's not an exhaustive list. It's just things that we've thought of and we'd love to work on it more. You need to get the word sustainable growth out of the 10-year plan and be a little bit wary about where you use growth and what you mean by it. We want Council to investigate alternatives to a growth-based economy. Amsterdam City is about to use the donut economic model for its COVID rebuild or recovery. And that model is about finding an economic policy which meets the needs of all people, so their basic needs are met, and it's done within the limits of the planet. So it's talking a lot about regenerative economy, distribution, sorting things out, and we have to live between those outer limits of destroying the planet and the inner limit of causing suffering to people. The author of that book, Donut Economics, came out to New Zealand last year. Her book's in the City Library, and she's got a lot of insights to offer at the moment of times of great change. In regard to CO2 emissions, we really want the Council to have a much more ambitious goal because the situation has changed since you set the goal. Extinction Rebellion Worldwide asks for net zero carbon emissions by 2025. That would be an enormous job, but I think we need to have a very ambitious goal and find ways to work towards it. And working on climate change, we want Council to make particular provision for iwi input into climate change mitigation decisions. We need their voice. And to get change on climate change, we need to motivate and empower the people of the city to want to live sustainably. So telling the truth about the climate catastrophe, you know, it's so painful. We don't actually want to know about it. I don't want to know about it. It's awful. But unless we tell the truth, tell people that it's not too late to avert the worst of it and let them know what sort of steps they can take, we're not going to get change. And so we're hoping Council can show leadership with this. One example of a way to empower people I came across was for the city of Oberlin in Ohio, America, and they have an environmental dashboard which is online in real time, and it shows the level of pollution in the river, it shows the amount of drinking water being used at that time, and it shows other statistics which probably don't apply to us, but I thought we could probably come up with our own local ones that would be really helpful and do something in conjunction with Horizons. In terms of practical things that people can do, if we had every house with its own rainwater collection tank and its own solar power energy, that would reduce the burden on the environment. So we're suggesting that there's interest-free loans sorted out for people to get solar power and rainwater tanks on the existing places, and that it's a requirement for all new builds that they have a rainwater tank and a solar power generating source. We love the fact we've got a recycling centre at Awapuni, but in view of trying to establish a more regenerative economy that lives within the planetary limits, how about expanding the reuse, the repairing, the repurposing before recycling, and let people know it's happening, and maybe have sort of empty shops in town that also have repair clinics and things to encourage people to make stuff last rather than rushing out and buying something new. As part of looking after and recycling everything, we'd love the Council to start collecting food waste along with the usual rubbish and standard recycling.
Beth, just to signal that there's around 2 minutes left.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, and so post-COVID, please filter all the projects you take on through, does it help decrease carbon dioxide in the long term? Does it increase environmental sustainability and biodiversity? And does it help the poorest people in our city? we're really concerned that you've committed money, no money from the government to extend the terminal building at the airport, because we all know that aviation is a huge fossil fuel guzzler, and so that is disappointing. We hope you can really veto out such projects in future, and look at things like local currency to get the local economy moving. We have loaves out in Ashurst where people can use the loaf money to buy things. Maybe that would be a good model for other suburbs. There's lots of other things we could talk about, but I'm running out of time, so I'll stop at that point. But thank you very much.
Okay, we may have time for one question. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Beth, for your submission and the many suggestions that you've made. I know I picked up on your comment there at the end about the questions that we need to ask ourselves, and one of those was, how does it help the poorest people in our city? And I note that you have made a comment in your written submission about supporting, minimising debt and living within our means. I guess I'd be interested to know, I mean, obviously our means is determined by what we charge our ratepayers, and what's proposed is for there to be a 4.4% increase in what we charge our ratepayers. Do you have a view about, are you able to expand on what you think would be appropriate, or how you think we could be helping the poorest people in our city?
Okay, well, for a start, I think that we need to be very careful with rate increases at the moment, because the situation has changed. And I think that some of the ways are things like, and Ed was talking about before, about looking after the poorest people, getting food to them, working on community gardens. We wondered about using some of the unemployed people with good transferable skills to support community gardens and growing food and delivering it, and making compost and setting up recyclable things that help people. If we start to use the resources we've already got rather than pulling on new resources, that will hopefully benefit people who are struggling financially.
And
Okay.
I'm going to have to call it there. So thank you for responding to the question. And you know that these matters will be referred to the 20th of May for further consideration. So thank you for your time this morning, Beth, and you're welcome to stay on if you choose to.
Thank you, Tangi.
We'll move to our next submitter, number 34, Karen Adams. Karen, are you with us this morning?
I should be unmuted now, is that right?
Yes, well done. So welcome. I'm not too sure if you were at the start of the meeting.
No, I wasn't, no.
Okay, that's fine. So the way that this works is that you have 10 minutes to speak to your submission. You can take your written submission as being read. So if you are expecting some questions, then it would pay to leave some time for that. We don't have a timer system easily working this morning. So if we get to around 8 minutes and it's convenient, I might just chip in and just indicate that there's around 2 minutes left. And for your benefit, Councillor Finlay had declared an interest in this submission. So while he is in the meeting, he won't be participating in the sense of making any comments or asking any questions about the submission. Otherwise, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'll just take, as you said, my submission is read. And I'm really interested in, if you have any questions about it. Basically, the crux of it is I just heard the last couple of submitters allude to the difference now to the annual plan given the COVID ideals, and basically mine is around expenditure, and that it's transparent, necessary, and that the budgets will have to be reworked around needs and wants. So happy to answer any questions in regards to my submission.
Well, thank you. We already have a few listed, so we'll start with Councillor Bowen.
Hello, thank you, Karen, for your submission. Can you see me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good. It was really to follow up on a couple of points you made in your written submission. where you talked about submitting your concerns via the help desk. I noted you'd done that in a couple of occasions with the overflowing rubbish bins at Heara Kotahi and around footpath uplifting on College Street. I just wanted to get your feedback on that level of service. When you ask for things to be done, how was that responded to? Did you feel like that was a good way of getting your issues addressed?
Yes, in the first instance, the council help desk people are fantastic and really helpful, because I ring them on a wide range of issues in regards to the well, you know, like it's just easy and I don't have a lot of time. So no, that the staff have been wonderful, always putting me on to the right person if they can't answer my question directly. In regards to the rubbish bins, yes, that did eventually get done, and I sent some photos through to Councillor Dingwall just to show an example. So my thing around that whole bridge and those rubbish bins, and it's happened again since the coffee cart started up. There's only one rubbish bin close to the toilets, which gets, you know, which kind of needs two. People are lazy; they won't go find the other one that's on the other side of the entranceway there. But my concern was they weren't getting emptied very often, and given that I walk that route every day, I can see it when it's like that. In regards to the footpaths, nothing's happened. My concern, especially with College Street, because I have a property there, is that there was so much work done around that cycleway, that they obviously only looked at the road, because that whole road of College Street basically from Cook Street down to Maxwell's Line, there are so many faults in the footpaths there, with lifted footpaths, and little minor repairs have been done, but it doesn't make it any easier for pedestrians or people running or walking. And there's a lot of elderly people that live down around that area, and and it's just dangerous.
Okay, thank you for that, Karen. I think particularly what I'll take from that is it's a good way to get a problem solved, but in particular with that bin issue, there aren't enough bins and they need to be emptied more often.
Well, I was going to ask a question around that. There seem to be different coffee cart operators there. I think maybe part of if they're going to be able to operate a business there, that they bring their own rubbish bins that they take away, because there's so much rubbish. Like you'll just be able to see the amount of, that should be part of them being able to operate there, is that they bring their own bins, because people will just throw it in, because they generally sit around there, and perhaps take away some of it. Some of it will go on, but
that's a really good suggestion. Thank you. I've noted that. Thank you all from me, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. We have a few questions. So the next one, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Karen, for your submission. And I note that, a lot of your submission is around basic infrastructure and where you think the sort of priority of council should be. And you've sort of finished off by saying, well, post COVID-19, you want to see a reprioritisation of spend. So would it, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but where do you think that spend should be, I suppose?
Well, we still haven't, the core business that people want to see from council is that our rubbish is dealt with in an environmentally friendly way. And I see Fielding put in the Manawatu Standard a couple of days ago, have put in one of their shovel-ready projects to government was around the recycling plant that they're looking. So I'd just like council to look at ways to save money, deal with our core business, which is, not just the recycling, but our waste that I don't think should be going into landfill. And if you're, like Extinction Rebellion earlier talking about carbon emissions, well, I know that people have an issue with the emissions from incinerated rubbish, but if you've taken out all of the recycling, a lot of the toxic waste that's left over from incinerating the remainder of the rubbish actually isn't there. Those incinerating systems work on burning everything to produce a product, e.g. electricity. I'm saying if you don't put in that electricity and having something come from it, and you're just getting rid of the rubbish, then, and don't make it a, it has to be profitable, because at the moment you've got all these councils in the region using different ways and spending money to get outside contractors for some of them, and you have to give a certain volume of rubbish. It just doesn't make sense. So if we can combine efforts regionally, I think that will help reduce the rates burden and get rid of chucking things in landfill, which people, like if we're actually thinking about it, that recycling that's getting shipped away overseas, like the carbon footprint of that alone is, it's worth joining forces with other councils who are willing to do things like that. So, yeah.
So, core services, but with an environmental lens, would that be a fair summary?
Absolutely, and it should be. Well, I mean, how long have we been trying to fix the wastewater? There were other things in the like for development costs. We shouldn't be going on water restrictions, because actually the Extinction Rebellion later brought it up, which I'd put in a previous submission about rainwater tanks that they have in Australia for new builds. And development costs, if we have a reducing development cost, if they add things that put less strain on the infrastructure, like the rainwater tanks, holding tanks and solar, then they could have you need to have an incentive for people to want to change the way that they do housing. When we build council housing, all of those things could be taken into account, because we can't, what town planning is there if you're going to grow and grow and grow, but you don't build more and more dams. You have to have a better way of doing it. And there's lots of examples around the world where they already do those things. The interesting thing that I note with when I rang up council, the helpline one time, was that there's no minimum permeable area for subdivisions in Palmerston North. Now, most other councils have that, and there's a good reason for that. So you have to have a minimum 40% for most local districts for residential properties. We don't have that, and I just can't understand why not.
Well, we do. Sorry, I just interrupted there. We do have a requirement in the district plan for new subdivisions that all the stormwater has to be managed on site.
So but not for infill housing.
No, the infill is more of an issue, certainly. Yeah,
that's right. So, and since then, we've had a massive increase in flooding around Palmerston North year on year since the amount of infill housing that's gone in. So that's a major oversight, and lots of these properties that I've seen are just full of concrete and house. So there's nowhere for that water to go.
Thank you. I think we've got about a minute or less left. Sure. So Councillor Barrett, do you have a quick question?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Karen. Really good to hear from you, and a number of good points in the submission that have already been traversed in some of the other questions. The point that I wanted to pick up on was around Hearakatahi, your concerns there around the construction quality and ongoing maintenance needs, and just wondered if you could expand on that briefly to help us focus where you'd like to see us go.
Well, the focus, I mean, it's already been done, so thank you, Brent, for that. It's already been done. I have a real issue around the quality of work, given that it's less than a year since it opened and there's so many cracks already. There's cobblestones coming away. The surface on the top is coming away, and all of that pathway that's leading up to Ahamati Park already had cracks less than a week after it was laid. That area where it used to flood all the time, because I walk down there every day, probably wasn't the most suitable surface to have put to the right as you look at it from the city end for that path. So I really want to what sort of oversight is there for these expensive additions, which are actually nice to have, and who was responsible for coming up with the materials used, because they're quite honestly, obviously not suitable for the task.
And at that point, I'm going to have to interrupt because time for the submission is over. So thank you once again, Karen, for the submission, for taking the time to speak to that submission this morning. What's going to happen is all of this material will be referred to the Committee of Council meeting on the 20th of May for further consideration in the first instance. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Councillors, we'll move. There is one final item, and that is submitter number 4, Joe Erkins. By agreement, he has submitted a written verbal statement that the Democracy and Governance Manager will read on his behalf. So there will obviously not be an opportunity for questions, but I understand that this was the best arrangement that could be put in place given Mr. Erkins' desire to have the information brought to the committee's attention. If he was able to attend, he would. So at this point, Hannah White, I'll invite you to read the statement.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm reading verbatim from the message that was received from Joe Erkin. It's entitled Verbal Submissions in Written Form by Joe Erkins, Ashurst. Mayor and Councillors, in my submission to you, I have expressed grave concern about the inability from a number of people who have lost employment because of COVID-19 to pay for rates and the extra increase in the rates charge. Also amongst them, probably a number of shop owners who had to close the doors and cannot continue. As it seems, you all have decided to continue with the proposed rate increase regardless of any of us. Personally, my rates bill is more than 10%, PNCC only, of my New Zealand super. On top of this, all other charges for Horizon, insurance, power, Spark, telecom, and others will bring this up to a much higher number. It sounds to me hypocritical that on one hand you are a city who is looking after the elderly. At the same time, you express this concern about the people who are going to lose their jobs and the uncertain monetary market. Now the CEO, Heather Shotter, jumps in too and suggests to those who cannot pay to go to the Ministry of Social Development for a handout. Yeah, right. This is unbelievable that from nobody there is, like it seems, any understanding what those who have lost their income are going through. Your only thought is how I can get paid. The councillors are getting up to $60,000. The mayor is getting up to $150,000 plus vehicle. The CEO is getting over $400,000 plus vehicle. How dare you? Oh yes, sorry for not mentioning this, but the CEO and the mayor decided not to take their full income. The least you can do is reduce to 0% the increase of the rates. Then reschedule your priorities to look at wastewater treatment plant first. After that, the systems in place to transport all the wastewater to the treatment plant. Secondly, as a city, we have to be sure that rainwater is taken away without flooding parts of the city. Thirdly, we have to be sure that in times of need, we have enough water and not to reduce the amount people are able to use. Over the coming months, because of COVID-19 restrictions, no contractor is allowed to have a full crew working. That means the council does not have to pay contractors full rates. This also means that the council will save money over time. Therefore, why do ratepayers have to pay any increase at all? Again, to me, this means the council is greedy and want to make sure that enough money is available to be paid. All the ratepayers pay through the rates for those amenities, but it seems more important for the council to waste money on beautifying certain areas of the city and waste the rates more than the money for the right purposes. Shame on you, Joe Erkins, Ashurst.
Thank you, Hannah. Now, I understand their committee administrators have a recommendation to put up on the screen. Thank you. So I will move that all material be referred to the Committee of Council meeting on 20 May 2020 for its consideration in the first instance, and also that the meeting be adjourned and resume again at 9 AM on Monday, the 11th of May 2020. Do I have a second? Councillor Barrett, are you happy to second that? It's just you happen to be on my screen. Excellent. So that is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Barrett. I will open it up for any comments, noting that we don't tend to comment on the substantive nature of submissions, but comments on any process. There are no comments, so I'll all invite you to unmute, and I'll put both of those together. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Abstentions? If not, that is carried. Thank you everyone for your time this morning. Thank you to colleagues, thank you to staff, thank you to submitters. The meeting is adjourned through to Monday, 9 a.m.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tangi.